was happening. He was a KGB defector at the same time. Same thing's happening right now, just from different sources. Yeah, and we know exactly what's happening and who's doing it. And here's the thing: a lot of the people in the USSR who were sending this propaganda are the same people here in America, right? There was a lot of people in Germany, in Russia, in these other nations, and as soon as World War II ended, they came straight to America. They start doing the same thing they were doing in Germany or Russia or all these other nations. The USSR was good for the USA. Sure. It's the internal Anglo, John and Sally Rothschild. It's sad to see the West fall. Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, in a way, I think it's because of, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's because of Western people. I think it's because of us, which is obviously going to be an unpopular opinion. But we have to understand the fact, I talked about this yesterday. I'll make myself big, just talking. We have to understand the fact that America is not a gift from God or a gift from Earth that was just dropped upon us. There you go, guys. Congratulations. Here's a gift. It's not like a present, okay? God did not give America as a present to the American people today. America was built through bloodshed and labor of our ancestors. The only way to maintain a nation is through, not necessarily bloodshed, but, blood, sweat, and tears, right? Really putting in that labor to make the country great and keep it that way. And there's always going to be subversive people in any nation trying to change the country. You need a strong base of people who will fight against that and protect it. And frankly, after the Second World War, it seems like the entire West has just been completely demoralized and has just given up and said it's not worth fighting for anymore. If every single working class American in the US just decided today, we are, done with the system the way it is, we are going to be like, we're all quitting our jobs, and I don't think we should do this necessarily, but theoretically speaking, if every white working class Christian man in America just said, we're done with this, we're checking out, we're going to resist, whatever they do, mass strike, what is that called? White strike. If they did a legit revolution, whatever the case may be, that would actually save the country, okay? If you had a cohesive group of white working class men who finally snapped and said, this is enough, we need to fight back, that would save the country. And same with Europe, right? But unfortunately, there's maybe only 10% of guys who want to do that, or 20%, or maybe even less than that, maybe 1% who are actually wanting to fight, and then 0.001% who are willing to lose their job to fight, or lose their life in fighting. So the decline of the West, ultimately, I think, is because of our own people. If every American said we're totally sick of mind geek and pornography, we could get rid of it. But the reality is that so many Americans are just coomers and materialists and individualists that we don't care, and we just don't fight. So yeah, I know that there's subversive people in our government. I know what the ruling class is doing. I know that there's foreign nations involved in the subversion of America. But ultimately, you can fight against this. We've seen this in history. We've seen in past regimes in history where it's been total degeneracy, total just clown worldness, and then the people come together, rally around a strong leader and say, enough is enough. And they go and they make radical changes. And it's through their labor, though. It's through their labor that they do it. It's not through the economy. It's not through even necessarily revolution and fighting. It's through their labor and through their ability as strong men that they can change the entire nation. You're gonna go listen to Lil Peep and Vape. All right, but you have fun. Thanks for joining, Arian. Always good to have you. Biden bombed our place in 1999 in the NATO Serbia bombing. They also bombed a part of Croatia, and these bombs were full of uranium, and it's still causing cancer. Yikes. He is anything but peaceful. He was one of the people who just wanted to bomb it. What was that referring to? He's talking about Biden? We should release him when we get power. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's I feel so bad for the guy, James. I don't know if the kid's going to kill himself or what, but I was going to write him a letter, but I don't want to end up... I'm probably on whatever list, there is already. If I'm not, I would certainly be on one if I wrote to him. I don't know if you're allowed to say political things. I wanted to write him and be like, hey, man, just so you know, I'm talking about you on my streams and, you know, making videos about this. And, you know, like my TikTok video has just over 100,000 views. I think that would lighten him up if I was like, hey, I made a video, it has over 100,000 views explaining how you're innocent. You know, hundreds of people in the comments are saying that you should be free. You know, keep up the, you know, high spirits, bro. I don't know if I'm allowed to, like, write things involving his case or conviction or anything political. They might just throw that out and then never give it to him. I'm not sure. But, you know, I was considering, like, writing the dude a letter. But yeah, I mean, if there's ever an opportunity where he, you know, should be free, I don't know though. It's hard to say. Why are leftists obsessed with Mike Lindell? The dude literally is just a right winger who owns a pillow company. Yeah, I know. It's because they fear him. They understand that he's so powerful. They understand that he's going to be Emperor of America. They're intimidated because they know AJ's behind him, and whenever AJ gets behind someone, they just become so powerful, right? Trump was one of the most peaceful presidents. Yeah, he fixed the North Korean problem. We have never heard another thing from Kim Jong-un since, you know, Trump threatened to nuke him. Genius. So glad we played that card. Is Owen going to turn himself in? Yeah, obviously he is. He's not going to run. Owen Schroeder should have his charges dropped. Owen should flee the country. He's not going to flee the country. He's going to turn himself in. Dude, I don't know what's going to happen, though. Like, someone like Baked Alaska, didn't he get taken in by the feds, and now he's suddenly free to go? Like, I don't know. He was inside of the building, wasn't he? He was live streaming inside of the Capitol. I don't know how that happened. Don't know how he got out of that situation when other people are being, like, held without charge and, like, waterboarded or whatever, you know, there. He just got to walk out, which is kind of an interesting thing. But maybe it'll be the same for Owen. Maybe we'll keep our hopes high. AJ said he going to jail. Is he okay? Oh, I'm not going to jail. Not today, at least. Not anytime soon, as far as I'm aware. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a very by-the-book kind of guy. My minor's in legal studies, so I try my best to remain lawful at all times. So, I don't think I'll be going to jail anytime soon. If I go to jail, it's going to be for something that's not real. I'll tell you guys that right now. Clip it, okay? If I'm in prison one day for something that sounds really crazy and out of character, it's not real. I'll just be like James, though. Make sure you guys write me letters. How about that, okay? Because there's not a lot we can do to resist the establishment if it's if it came to that. Just write me nice letters, okay? That's all I ask. Send me memes. Literally print memes out on paper, fold them up, put them in an envelope, and send them my way. I really appreciate that. And cryptic ones too, like 13 despite 50 kind of memes that, like, you know, can sneak past the filter and I'll get. The USA is destroying itself. It's in war with itself, and it's like the Balkans. Too much racial and other diversity. It's going to destroy, like, the Balkans. Yeah, look. Ultimately, what it is, it's not so much about race as it is ethnicities, right? Every ethnicity, by its definition, is its own group of people, and that's how you define an ethnicity. A unique group of people with its own lifestyle, culture, beliefs, attitudes, lifestyles, etc. Okay? Take blacks and whites in America. They have their own way of speaking, their own dialects, right? They have their own religious denominations. They have their own lifestyles, beliefs, culture, lifestyles, etc. Because of all those differences, you'll never find a system that can govern both people to where both are happy, right? There's always going to be, generally speaking, one of the two groups unhappy with the current governing policies. So take affirmative action, for example. When the system was made for white people, I sound like a liberal, but when the system was made for the people who made up America, which was primarily whites, it said basically, if you want to get into university, you need good grades. Really simple. Well, it turns out that on average, blacks have lower grades than whites. I think this is due to genetics. I think that's the biggest determining factor is genetics. Other people will say most socioeconomic factors. Regardless of what it actually is, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that generally speaking, blacks have lower grades than whites. So blacks can't get into universities as much as whites. So what do we have to do? We can either keep the system as it is to benefit whites, which is solely going off grades and test scores, or we can change it to the benefit of blacks where we say we're going to make it easier for black people to get in. Well, that's to the detriment of whites. There's no possible scenario where both groups are happy. Either the majority of whites are upset because there's affirmative action, or the majority of blacks are upset because it looks like racism that only whites can get into university, right? So as a result, and it's not just with blacks and whites, but Hispanics and Asians and Native Americans and all of these groups we have in America, all of these ethnic groups, which are just, like I said, at their core, different groups of people, unique groups of people with their own cultures, lifestyle, beliefs, attitudes, etc. All of them have different interests and all of them conflict with one another to some extent. So there has to be balkanization. There's either balkanization or oppression. There is not one or the other. It's either it's one or the other. It can't be we can't integrate fully and have people not oppressed, if you know what I mean. I explained that poorly, but you guys get the point, right? So balkanization, that's why I think balkanization is going to happen, because if not, what you're going to see is a system that suppresses or oppresses white people as they become a minority, or suppresses whatever ethnic minority exists in America. 80% of truck drivers are white men. Yeah, I know. Wait until they come out with self-driving trucks and you see how mad the white man will get. You guys think that in 2015 you saw a lot of white guys be radicalized and go to Trump? Wait until they fire all the truck drivers and all these guys who have no skills other than driving a car, which is now obsolete. It's an obsolete skill. Wait till they all have to vote. And they're not going to be voting for Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang. So that's what I mean about accelerationism. Like, it's going to happen, but we shouldn't be pumping, we shouldn't be putting our foot on the gas. We're going fast enough as is. Base truck drivers. Pornography is like a mousetrap. The mouse doesn't realize why the cheese is free on the trap. That's an interesting analogy. If the product is free, you're the product. Very true. What's up, Christian? Welcome back. Pillow supremacy. Owen should activate Tesla coils. I'll write you letters when it happens. I appreciate that. When it happens. Oh, if that happens. Roger. I'll write you letters and send you books if I can. Now, that would be very epic. Speaking of North Korea, I was looking at some leaked footage. Although they're oppressive, the streets are nice and clean. There's nothing to litter with. What are you gonna do? Throw your bag of chips on the ground? Like, they don't have food. No, in reality, yeah, it's obviously, when you're running any type of like authoritarian dictatorship, things are usually pretty clean. I think things are pretty squared away and put together. And not like this is an endorsement of like a totalitarian regime or anything. Or totalitarian regimes in general. That's not an endorsement of any of those people. It's just an observation. Baked Alaska was sent to jail for a couple of weeks, I think. Well, that's interesting. AJ, I'll print out Industrial Society. I'm not a big Kaczynski fan, but I'll take it, I guess. You get bonus points for high school and university if you're black, Muslims, or gypsies. That's pretty wrong. I'll print out flyers for you in prison so you can red pill the whites and break out. Yeah, hey, maybe, right? I choose balkanization. I think that's the most reasonable outcome. That's the most practical outcome, the safest outcome for our people. Because if there's a big civil war, who's fighting in it? It's going to be majority whites, right? The military is going to be overrepresented on both sides of a bunch of white guys. And we're going to get a bunch of people killed. Look at the Second World War. We should have avoided the First and Second World War by all means, because what happened? 80 million white people died in the Second World War. How many died in the First World War? And again, the effects of that the West post World War II destroyed. The entire Western world destroyed as soon as World War II ends. And it's like, I don't want to see that happen. America is like, the American people are like the last, bastion for, epicness. I can't come up with a better word. But, in America, at least the American white, as opposed to the European white, still loves his guns and loves his free speech and is resistant to a lot of this globalization and global homo stuff. And like the UN and these, international bodies, a lot of white men in America are very Christian, and women too. So it's like, I see what happened to Europe after a giant war, and I'm like, I do not want that to happen in America. Like, being realistic about this, the American Civil War is not going to be fought by like just Hispanics and blacks and natives. It's going to be fought by primarily white people on both sides of the war. That's not something I want to see, and I don't want to see anyone die, right? But particularly my own people, white Christian men, I don't want to see them die. The best case scenario is we just go our separate ways. We take our land, we cut our losses, and we can, build a new country and learn from the mistakes that our ancestors made, or not even our ancestors, but like our grandparents made, and not repeat those same mistakes. In my opinion, that is the best case scenario at this point. America is not salvageable. I don't think that we can save America, which is really ironic being a nationalist, that I'm like, we're kind of too far gone to save the nation at this point, like the entire country. So I think we kind of need a restart. And we can't restart with the entire country because, we talked about the demographic issue. You shouldn't get bonus points because of the color of your skin. Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to building a country, it would be nice to have it based on merit and not just based off your, your physical appearance. I literally had a class with a black student. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously a problem. Yugoslavia fell because of all the countless religions. They had different thoughts, mindsets. Yeah, and I mean, these are all things that make up ethnicities, right? Like, Yugoslavia was like a mix of, like, what, 10 different ethnic groups? And look how much drama that caused. Look how much fighting that caused. And then they balkanized. They all go their separate ways. And now there's not, I would assume, not as much resentment, right? People are kind of like, okay, we can live among our own people. We can make our own laws. Because, again, if you take the black and white Americans, another case where you can't have a law that benefits, generally speaking, whites and blacks at the same time, it's one or the other, is policing, okay? Whites want, like, tough on crime. Most white people want hard sentencing for drug, offenders and murderers and rapists and things. And we want to go hard on criminals, and we want everyone to be judged exactly the same. If you commit the crime, you go to prison for this amount of time. However, again, because blacks are overrepresented in crime, and whether that's due to genetics, impulse control, delayed gratification, or socioeconomic status, whatever it may be, the reality is they commit more crime. So if we make a law saying it doesn't matter if you commit, it doesn't matter who you are, you go to prison for like 100 years if you're a murderer, that's going to disproportionately impact blacks. Now, whites are totally fine with that. They're like, well, just don't commit crime, and they move along with their day. Blacks, on the other hand, say, well, that's a system of racism. That's because the system's institutionally racist against us, and they're not happy. So how do we solve the problem? Either blacks are being oppressed by having to live under a racist system, and the majority are dissatisfied with the system, or we change the system to give lighter sentencing to blacks, and whites are dissatisfied because now whites are being given harsher sentences than blacks are for the same crime. You can't benefit both groups. It's impossible because these groups, by definition of them being different groups, have different cultures, lifestyle, beliefs, and attitudes. Part of these different beliefs are the beliefs of how the government system should work. So as a result, the best case scenario in my mind is if blacks have their own government and they can have their own black police officers, or whites if they want. They can have their own government with their own black representatives, and they can make laws for their own people. So it's not the white man's fault anymore. You guys make your own government, have your own sentencing laws, have your own jail sentencing, laws, have your own jails, have your own prisons, have your own police force, and whites, you do your thing, right? That would be the only way, in my opinion, to make both of these groups happy. I see absolutely no other way to satisfy both groups of people. Generally speaking, again, obviously there's a lot of exceptions. There's a lot of like black people who are like, oh yeah, well of course it makes sense. Like, just don't sell drugs, just don't resist arrest. There's a lot of white people who say, oh, the system is racist, so we should give blacks lighter sentencing, right? But generally speaking, you cannot satisfy both of these groups at the same time. So the only way that I see you could do that is allow them to separate and let both have their own, self-determination. It's sad that we won't be as epic as Rome. Yeah, well, I mean, we came close. We still have a great history. The way we can balkanize can be like Rome. I haven't really looked into the fall of Rome. I mean, broadly, but not specific enough that I could talk too much about it. Yeah, but how balkanization work with a state that is keeping us down? I don't know. I have no idea how it will happen. I mean, honestly, I think it's going to get to the point where we're almost at war, but no one wants to fight, and then the establishment just kind of gives up. Which might sound, unreasonable, but I mean, if they have no one who's willing to fight their war, then what are they going to do? If we have no money left, if we're $50 trillion in debt by, after the next 20 years, and we have no soldiers who are willing to fight for this country, if things have gotten even worse than they are today, I mean, I'm not willing to fight and die for this country anymore. Ask me a few years ago if I was, I'd say absolutely. Right? Today, I'm like, no way. Good luck trying to draft me. Before, I used to hope I got drafted. I'm like, I want to get out of university. I hate this. My parents are making me stay here. I want to get drafted so I can do something fun in life. Today, I'd be a draft dodger. I'd be like, no, thank you. So I think a lot of people are feeling that sentiment as well. I've talked to a lot of guys who said, yeah, I was interested in the Army or the Marines or whatever, and now I really don't want to because all we're doing is pushing global homo, and I don't agree with the regime. What are we fighting for? Abortion and drag queen story hour? That's not something I'm willing to die for. So I think on both sides, Antifa's not willing to die for the establishment. The right isn't willing to die for the establishment. I don't think really anyone is other than these neocons who don't want to fight in war because they're all these limp-wrist, 17-year-olds on TikTok. But even like the policy wonks who are neocons, they're not sending their kids to war. They're not enlisting in the military. These are war profiteers. So with all that said, I don't think there's anyone who's going to be willing to fight the battle, and then we're just going to have to inevitably just split up. And I mean, look at what happened with Chaz. Chaz was like its own independent nation, so to speak, for like, how long? A couple weeks. And no one cared. Did you guys care? If Chaz became like a real country, would we really argue? If all these Antifa people moved there permanently and they just like had a border wall and they were like a real country, would any of us really care? I wouldn't. I think I think we're going to see that happen a lot more. We're going to see free cities and people are going to move there and live there. Maybe there's going to be a city like Waco, Texas or something, and they're going to say, hey guys, it's a bunch of whites. They're like, we're withdrawing. This is like a new country now. And I think a lot of people in even maybe in Texas are going to be like, we're not willing to fight our fellow Texan to take this city back. Who cares? Just let them have it. Like Portland. The Portland National Guard did not take over Chaz. The police didn't care. No one cared. And they just became their own country. But it happened so naturally. It happened so naturally despite all the media hysteria. The people who run the state will leave to London, Paris, Prague. Yes. And that's when they don't care about us anymore. And we'll be able to balkanize. Yeah, that's kind of the sign that America is officially over when all the elite move. That's what I've always said. Watch some recent Panther Den YouTube videos. They're short and big white pills. Alright, I'll look into that. Texas is powerful enough to become its own nation. It's so powerful. Yeah, Texas should succeed before it's too late because, I mean, the demographics of Texas are like worse than the demographics of America. Texas is only like 50% white, I think. It's not like and it's like a purple state. It's not even like a deep red state right now. And it's going to turn blue in the future. So, I mean, I don't know what Texas is doing. There's one guy running for governor there. Don Huffins, I believe his name is. And he's a total chat, Sigma male. Like, talk about a Sigma male. This guy is saying, we're building a border wall. I don't care what the Supreme Court says. We'll do it anyways. We're banning abortion. I don't care what the Supreme Court says. We're doing it anyways. That's the kind of attitude that, that we need in this country. So I think maybe he would be the one who says, yeah, we're succeeding. Screw you guys. Goodbye. Not that, just the governor could do it, but if he could push that through or that idea or mobilize the masses in that direction, I think that'd be very epic.